Oh, thanks for cutting the music. I was going to dance pretty soon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. It is very exciting to see how many of you care about our bighorn sheep, so thank you so much. My name is Patrice Merritt, and I am board chair of the Rancho Mirage Library and Observatory Foundation. And with your assistance and of our many donors, including individuals, foundations, and our community partners, such as the Bighorn Institute, we can bring you programs such as this, free and open to all. So if you haven't already grabbed one of our program guides from March through May, I know the season is ending, but there still is ample opportunity for you enjoying library programs. And yes, we do continue our programming throughout the summer. So our work is not done when the valley somewhat empties. Today's program showcases our local and endangered peninsular bighorn sheep and the recovery efforts of the Bighorn Institute in saving the species. You will hear how the Institute has overcome many challenges facing the sheep and the prospects of their future. Our speaker, Aimee Byard, will tell you how you can help. Ms. Byard is the Director of Operations and the Biologist for the Institute. She has been with the organization for 23 years, and may I say, Aimee, you're so young that no one would have guessed 23 years. And her passion about the plight of the sheep will be evident in today's lecture. So before I introduce her, I want to say, save the sheep, and please join me in welcoming Aimee Byard.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for letting me be here to talk to you about bighorn sheep in the Coachella Valley. And do I look young? Okay. So much pressure. So one of the first questions we get is, what are they called? Are they peninsular or are they desert bighorn? What's correct? Both are correct. So they're called peninsular bighorn because they reside in the peninsular ranges which stretch from Palm Springs to the Mexican border. They are also correctly called desert bighorn because they reside only in the desert. At the turn of the 19th century, there was 1.5 to 2 million wild sheep in North America. Today, there are 70,000 bighorn sheep. In 1979, there were about 1,200 peninsular bighorn sheep in the United States, and that would be just from Palm Springs to the Mexican border. It's the only place they reside. In 1996, they dropped down to just 280. Yeah, drastic decline. So the main reasons for those declines include disease from domestic livestock, primarily sheep and goats, habitat loss and fragmentation or urbanization, insufficient lamb recruitment or poor lamb survival, and predation coinciding with low population numbers. In 1998, they were listed as federally endangered and received a lot of protection, which was much needed. And today, there are about 800 peninsular bighorn in the United States. So again, that's just Palm Springs to the Mexican border. So they have, recovery is underway. So I'm going to talk to you about some general information about these sheep. Did you see how many sheep were in that slide? There's two. Did you see the ewe below the ram? She's right in front of the rocks. Yeah, so they blend in. That's one of their things. They blend in very well. So we're going to start with the basics. The males are called rams, the females are called ewes, and their offspring are called lambs. And this picture is a really good visual of how the ewe on the left, her horns, look very different from the ram on the right. The rams have those typical big horns for their name. And then that lamb in the middle, you can just maybe barely see some horns there. It's got about 1-inch horns. They start out gray, actually, and then they'll turn that golden color after a couple years. So as you just saw, all bighorn sheep have horns. Their horns are made of keratin, which is the same material as your fingernails. So when they break off, like the rams break off their horn tips, it doesn't hurt them. They do have a bony core from the base of their head about 1/3 of the way back, so they don't want to break them off. You can start seeing their horns about 2 months of age, and they grow their entire lives. So they don't shed their horns. Like deer shed antlers, bighorn sheep do not shed horns. So antlers are shed, horns are not. You can generally age rams by the growth rings that they get when their horns briefly stop growing during the rut, which is summertime. It's subjective because we have a year like this year where we have just incredible green up and vegetation, and we expect a lot more body growth, great nutrition, they'll get possibly bigger horn growth, etc. Versus a year of drought And really poor vegetation where they might not grow as fast, we have more runty looking lambs, things like that, and maybe smaller horn growth. So again, it's, you can generally age them. Shorter lives than ewes. On average, rams live about 9 to 12 years, whereas ewes about 10 to 14 years. Again, this is an average. We do have older of both sexes in the wild right now. And the oldest ewe we have ever documented was 20 years old, and that was in our captive herd, which I'll be talking about a little bit later. Yeah, so it happens. It just depends. You know, genetics plays a role, environmental conditions, things like that. So the rut, or the breeding season, takes place from August to November. Rams are polygamous, which means they'll breed more than one ewe, and they try to breed all the ewes. So there's no, you know, they're like, oh, he's with his baby. It's like that. He has no idea whose babies are. So the rams will headbutt for dominance because dominance equals breeding rights. And that's their whole goal, is they want to pass their genes down to the next generations and be represented in the population. So I got a little short video for you here. Yeah, that's not too hard of a hit. It can echo like a mile in a canyon. But I love this video because as ewe comes up, she's like, what are you guys doing? Are you fighting over me? While she chomps on her food. I'm just like, rude. And see, they can fall. They do get hurt sometimes. They don't fight to the death. That's one really cool thing I like about these animals is they don't try to hurt each other or fight to the death or anything. But injuries do happen, of course, because they're hitting hard. So there's a number of different behaviors that the rams will have during the rut, such as a low stretch that you see here on the right. We have horn displays. So that's where two rams come together and they face off and they're just like tilting their horns. Look how big I am. Don't try to tempt me into a fight. And it's really they're trying to avoid a fight. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. And then they'll do a lip curl. That ram on the left is doing a lip curl. They have, yeah, not the best look. We had a biologist once. She's like, I just think they look so funny like that. I was like, it's a biological thing. Just get over it, you know. So they have a Jacobson's organ in the roof of their mouth, and they can sense if a ewe is in estrus by smelling her urine. So they'll actually prompt her, like kind of kick her a little bit sometimes, or prompt her along to urinate. And it kind of annoys me because the ewes are really too willing sometimes to give this urine at the rut. So the rams can lose up to 25% of their body weight during the rut, and that's because they're traveling miles looking for ewes to breed. They will eat if they're with a ewe group and the ewes are eating, then sometimes they'll stop and eat when they're not chasing them, things like that. So rams live in bachelor groups with other rams during the non-breeding season, which is now. But the young rams will stay with the ewe group for the first 1 to 2 years of life. We did have one yearling ram who thought he was tough and could go with the big rams, but they'll be treated like a female. So he quickly made his way back to the ewe group. Yes, hard lessons to learn. So lambing season is now, it's January through June. It's my favorite time of year. I'm a sucker for the lambs. Look how cute this is. So ewes will give birth to one lamb typically following a 6-month gestation period. So they will isolate away from all disturbance, including other sheep. They want to be all by themselves. And then their lambs are born gray, like you see here. And then they'll turn brown in a couple months. But then they spend a few days bonding with that lamb. Because if they vocalize, then that lamb can recognize their voice. Now, I have not, in my 23 years, learned to differentiate this sound because they all sound the same to me. But it's amazing. And they have different smells, I'm sure. I don't know. They smell like sheep to me. But anyways, they can identify each other. It's pretty neat. So the lambs weigh about 8 pounds on average when they're born, so much like humans, but they can walk within minutes, and that's how they survive. It's incredible. So in our captive herd, which we've had, I'll talk about later, we would have to catch the lambs at 1 day old, or I kid you not, they can outrun us. I mean, they can outmaneuver us on the hills, and I have been outrun by a 1-day-old lamb. My name is Aimee. I'm here to confess. So that's what they're built for. They're all legs when they're born, and they're just incredible. So yeah, and they just have a cuddle factor of 100. So their home range knowledge, where they live, is passed down from generation to generation, and that's because the lambs spend their first year of life with their mothers. So they're learning all the important places to go. Where do we go eat? Where do we drink? Where do we go to, at night, etc. Different times of year, they might be in different areas. So they're learning all of these important things. So where do they live? They live in steep, open, mountainous terrain. So basically, all of our mountains here in the Coachella Valley, and they're south of the 10, are perfect habitat for these sheep. Now, Peninsular bighorn sheep are unique in that they're called low elevation sheep. And that's because they typically only reside from about 400 feet elevation to 4,000 feet. And that's despite given the option to go to 10,000 feet in the San Jacintos. So, and their home range is usually larger for the rams than the ewes. And that goes back to what I explained about those rams traveling miles searching for ewes to breed. But actually, the past couple years have been very interesting for our field work. We have seen, we expect rams to cross ranges. That's good. That keeps, genetic flow healthy. But we've seen a couple ewes crossing as well the past couple years from like the San Jacinto herd in Palm Springs over to the Rancho Mirage herd, northern Santa Rosas, and vice versa. We had one ewe from the Rancho Mirage herd. Actually, she was over in Dead Indian Canyon, all the way in Palm Desert, went all the way over to the Palm Springs Mountains. So that's incredible because you don't expect ewes to cross ranges. That's why they have that smaller home range. So really some neat habitat use and distribution we've seen locally. So bighorn sheep are herbivores. They'll eat all native plants, including cacti. I'm sure that most of you probably know this is a barrel cactus, and they'll actually open that up with their horns, and they eat that succulent inside. So their eyesight is their main defense. It's been likened to 8-power binoculars. So that's why if you see them, they're usually already looking at you first. So they see everything. The adults are brown like you see here. So those lambs, there's 2 lambs in the middle there, about 6-month-old lambs, and they're definitely tanned by now, blending nicely into their environment. Bighorn sheep are not aggressive. They flee any perceived threat. So you can see that they're up high. They like to go up high, get above it, and they're looking down at the person taking their picture, which is me in this case, and they're evaluating, do I need to keep running, and they're curious animals too. So they won't just necessarily, unless it's outright an obvious predator like a mountain lion's coming or something, they'll run and then they'll stop and look back oftentimes. And that's the case in this situation here. But they're gregarious and they live in herds, and that's for their protection. Because they're not aggressive, they rely on each other to protect themselves. So if you see a group of bighorn sheep bedded down, for instance, if you pay attention, they're usually a few bedded opposite directions, so they have a 360-degree view of what's coming, and then they'll warn each other. So it's pretty neat. So the sheep don't need to physically drink water every day. They can go months in the winter without drinking. They can go up to 3 days in 100-degree temperatures without drinking water. This ewe's actually on her knees. You probably can't tell that. Sometimes they'll get down on their knees to drink as well. And they're apparently not afraid of bees, although I have seen them get stung because they start hopping around like crazy. But mostly they're not really affected by them. It's pretty neat. So their main predators, well, their only predators here in our desert are mountain lions, coyotes, and bobcats. In other areas where they have like eagles, then lambs are susceptible to eagle predation, but not here. So the mountain lions are the main predators of adults, and the coyotes and bobcats primarily prey on lambs, bobcats especially. Bighorn sheep view dogs as predators because it's a canine like a coyote. So this is why we can't hike with our dogs in sheep habitat. And people will tell me, the sheep don't differentiate. Well, this looks like a chihuahua. This is definitely a coyote. They just see a canine predator, okay? And people say, well, my dog is a good dog. And that's great because my dog 100% is going to chase that sheep. It's got, prey drive. It's innate in all of our dogs. So there's 2 things that can happen if you bring your dog in sheep habitat. The sheep will either habituate and not train their lambs to properly avoid a predator, and then they'll get eaten by a coyote possibly later because they're not going to react to anything. So that's obviously not good. Conversely, they can just be stressed all the time, and obviously that's not good either. So we just want to avoid, they live in a very stressful environment here in the desert. We just want to avoid adding another stressor. And plus, we don't know when we're in their environment, we don't know what's important to them that they're doing. Like if they're trying to come down for water, that might be the only time of the day or days that they were going to come to drink. And if we disrupt that behavior, that might be it. So we can have a profound effect on them that we don't realize. So that's where we want to just keep our dogs elsewhere. There's other areas, and Rancho Mirage has a few dog-friendly trails, incidentally, so it's a good place. So pneumonia is the most threatening disease to Peninsular bighorn sheep. It's usually viruses are involved or bacteria like Mycoplasma pneumoniae. We've tried vaccines, et cetera, over the years, but what we've found is that the disease must just run its course. You usually have a number of years of low lamb survival, but prevention is key. So what that means is keeping them away from domestic livestock, again, primarily sheep and goats. And you might think, well, that's easily done here because we don't have those animals, but we do. So more than you think. There's some areas up in Palm Springs in the northern part, like around Blaisdell Canyon, which is just north of the tram. There's some little hobby farms there. We actually had released some yearling rams into that canyon years ago. And we had done a helicopter survey looking for the environment, making sure everything was clean, no issues in there. Well, the guy had a top on his enclosure for his goats. And it was right at the edge of town, or the town, the village there. So we didn't know there was a goat farm right there. Well, one of his goats got out and mixed with the bighorn sheep. And these sheep were going back into the core population and breeding each year so they could essentially wipe out the herd. And unfortunately, the goat and the ram had to be removed from the population. So just keeping them separate is just best for everyone and everything. And we've had some animals down in Thermal and Coachella, that area where they get loose, they go down. Right now, Anza Borrego Springs has a domestic sheep loose. It was near town. Don't know how it got there. That is the biggest threat to the sheep, a domestic sheep. So for disease standpoint. So they're trying desperately to find it so they can get it out of there before it interacts with the wild sheep down there. So that's one of our biggest populations of sheep is in the park because there's, it's a lot of wilderness and they have rangers and things that really keep the area just protected for the sheep. So I'm going to talk to you about Bighorn Institute's conservation efforts. We've been conducting long-term studies here since 1982. We have permits with the state and federal wildlife agencies, which is Cal Fish and Wildlife and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we also have a contract with the city of Rancho Mirage. In the early 80s, 90% of the lambs were dying. And so we came here in 1981 to look into the cause of that decline because that was determined to be the most important area in the whole state for the bighorn sheep, and then formed Bighorn Institute in 1982. So we found that lambs were showing signs of pneumonia. I don't know if you can tell, but this lamb is coughing, and that's a typical sign of upper respiratory disease. You got coughing, same as us, snotty noses, then they have droopy ears, and just all around like lethargic, they'll get a rough coat. That's all upper respiratory. So we got permission to bring in sick lambs. No one had ever done this before. We isolated 4 viruses. We actually got a couple MDs out of Eisenhower on our board to help with that and learn to do transtracheal aspirations where you actually get the sample from the lung where it's exactly what they had. That's where you know that's a virus because by the time you get it out of the nasal passage, it's maybe too late. We tried, we rehabilitated a lot of them, but the disease ran its course. We did remove domestic livestock from the range, but we were able to successfully rehabilitate 33 of 39 of these sick lambs, which again was never before done. Incredible. They said, if one dies, then you shut down your project. It's like, but nobody's ever done this, so it ended up being very successful. But we had a lot of people helping. Most of those sheep were released back into the wild. A lot of them were in the Rancho Mirage herd, and then some of them were kept as source stock for a captive breeding program. So the sheep were using the alluvial fans of the Rancho Mirage area, the Thunderbird Estates, for years. And when the Thunderbird was built in the 50s, they just adapted and started coming into this urban area. Well, we found it was not good for them. So we did a couple of mortality studies. We did an adult mortality study from 91 to 96 and found 34% of the adult collared bighorn died from urbanization, eating oleander, like you see right here, getting hit by cars right across the street here at Paxton, where that blind curve is. A lot of them were hit there. So we came to the city and the wildlife agencies suggested a fence. They weren't ready. So we did a lamb mortality study. We radio-collared lambs, which had never been done before, from 98 to 2001. Found 43% of the collared lambs died from urbanization. Drowned in pools. Mom was hit by a car, prematurely weaned, then they died. Things like that. Preventable deaths. So we came back, and the community was just outraged because these lambs were dying. And then the city of Rancho Mirage stepped up, and they installed a bighorn exclusion fence. And it was finished in 2002, completely eliminated all the urban-related bighorn deaths in this area. It's been an incredible recovery tool. So the fence is 8 feet high, chain link. There is a section across the street here that's like this square fencing. It's nice to look at, more expensive, so then they switched to chain link. It's painted to blend in like you see here. It's 4.5 miles long, and the sheep can actually jump 8 feet, but Jim, our director, went in the field every day with them to figure out, which communities, where to align the fence so that it wasn't like near a rock outcropping or something that would allow them to easily access the urban area. We did have one sheep jump over, a ewe jumped this span of fence that was a big gap on either side, and we're thinking, well, nobody's gonna jump that. Well, her lamb got under the fence, which we didn't. Bighorn sheep don't go under, they go over, and so we had to, get all in the mountains. The Ranch Mirage fence has helped accomplish the recovery goal of 25 ewes in this subgroup. There's 9 recovery regions, 9 subgroups throughout the Peninsula Ranges. It helped decrease adult mortalities. It totally eliminated urban-related mortalities. It helped increase lamb recruitment or survival. We saw a habitat shift away from habitat use away from the urban area. They were starting to go back into historic habitat. So that was very good. We wanted that because we have all this land to use, and they were just staying around the urban areas. And today there's about 130 adult bighorn in the Rancho Mirage herd, the northern Santa Rosa herd. And at the time of the fence, there's about 21, well, when they hit an all-time low, it was about 21 in this area. So yes, it's been an incredible recovery tool. The city's been just wonderful with that. So now La Quinta has had these exact same urban issues since 2007. It kind of started with these 5 rams just coming down here and there during the lambing season. And then in 2012, ewes and lambs started coming down. And then we had a big problem because once the ewes started bringing their lambs down, it just kind of escalated from there. And they're down daily. So there's 4 golf courses. From north to south would be Tradition, Silver Rock, PGA West, and the Quarry. And you got Lake Quia in there as well. So those are the 4 courses that they've been coming down, versus these other plants, So they just do that until they're made not to be there. We've got a lot of sick lambs. Both these lambs are very sick. When one lamb gets sick, then they all get sick because they spread it to each other because they're in these huge groups down there that you just don't see in the native habitat because there's not that much vegetation usually. They're more vulnerable to predators in these urban areas. Their eyesight, if you recall, I said their eyesight's their main defense. They need to be up high. When they're down in the urban areas, they've got the walls, they've got vegetation blocking. Mom's not paying attention to the lambs because they're busy eating, and a lot of problems down there. We have sheep running in the streets. They were down in PGA West every day, and they get out farther as well. And we actually had a lamb hit by a car in PGA West last year. And yeah, I mean, it's a 20-mile-an-hour community or something, but they're just out there. They'll dart in front of you. But people can get hurt too. We did have a lady hit a ram. The ram died and her airbag deployed, and she was very lucky she didn't get hurt. So the wildlife agencies required a fence to be built in 2014. And it was supposed to be built in 2 years. So since that time, we've documented 61 known bighorn sheep mortalities from them coming down to these golf courses. 24 have drowned in that canal, mostly in that canal you see right there, some in pools. We've had 1 auto collision, the one I just mentioned, 1 that we know of, 8 oleander. 19 have died from disease, and 16 unknown. Those 19 are lambs. And many more, I'm sure, have died that we didn't get to document. Most of them are unmarked. So finally, PGA West and Lake Quia have been fenced off. So Silver Rock got their fence up in 2017, but that really did nothing. It was just a segment. And now we've been working on getting PGA West and Lake Quia fenced. And it was finally completed in January of 2024, just this January, so 10 years late. But it's done, and the gates were finally closed and locked at the end of March. So we're going to see how the sheep adapt, but we're really pleased because they're locked out of the most dangerous areas, like with the canal, but they still have access to the Tradition and the Quarry, so on the north and south ends. And I just was in Tradition this morning, and the guard was all excited because they had all these babies down. And I was like, yes, you're going to be inundated more, but that's not good. He's like, oh, the guard got, videos and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, okay. So we still have to educate people with why this is bad for them. It's dangerous, nothing good comes from them being down here. So I'm going to talk to you about our monitoring efforts. We're in the field looking at habitat use and distribution, so where they are. We're looking at their demographics, how many, the age and sex structure, males and females, and then we're looking at their health and behavior. We're in the field daily monitoring 35 radio-collared sheep from Palm Springs to La Quinta. We have 3 study herds. It's the Palm Springs San Jacinto herd, Northern Santa Rosa Mountains herd, Rancho Mirage area, and then La Quinta herd, Central Santa Rosas. We're documenting reproduction and lamb survival. So how many lambs are born, but ultimately how many survive to increase the population. We help maintain 8 man-made water sources in the northern Santa Rosa Mountains, which is the Rancho Mirage area, by clearing vegetation and making sure their water is functioning. So if you look at this picture, the before and after, you've got all this arrowweed that's grown up around this water source. There's a catchment right behind that front boulder. This is a wonderful ambush site for a predator to just lay in wait there. So we'll go in, usually a couple times a year, and just level that. Just go in with hand trimmers and clear that all out. We hike that 4.5-mile fence every month, make sure there's no ways that the sheep can get back into the urban area here in Rancho Mirage. This is kind of an extreme case with the fence off the hinge. We did have another fence off the hinge from the tropical storm Hilary. We had several places of damage there, but this fence has been incredible. In the 20 years it's been up, 22, so they really did a good job installing it. And you see those bars on the bottom, those are flood panels. So those actually swing up because it was well thought out. Any ravines and such where water is going to flow, they planned for those to swing open, and we did help advise on that. So Bighorn Institute is a private recovery facility for the endangered Peninsular bighorn sheep. We have had a captive breeding and wild population augmentation program. We're on 300 acres of land in South Palm Desert, right between Bighorn Golf Club and the Visitor Center. And we tell people we're Bighorn Institute. It's like, I know where you are. It's like, no, you probably don't. You're thinking, I have somebody that works there or whatever. It's like, that's Bighorn Golf Club. They have the money, we have the sheep. So we're neighbors. They actually came in and named themselves after us because we were there first and after the sheep. But no, we're different. So we've had 145 lambs born in our captive herd since 1984. And we've released 127 sheep into the wild since 1985. And we've kept 2 of our local herds from disappearing, this program has, by supplementing the population. So you can see in this picture, they've all got collars and ear tags. So there's an adult right there in the middle, and then there's yearlings on either side of her. So most of the sheep we released were 1-year-old yearlings, because that's when they're best to be released. They are like teenagers, they want to join up, but occasionally we would release an adult. And they're all very wild. We are not open to the public, and that's to keep the sheep, disturbance down in our facility and help keep the sheep wild. They all go out with a collar so we can track their fate, see how they do. The yearlings are still growing, so I don't know that you can tell really, but they're a scrunchy, expandable collar on those yearlings, and then the adult has a permanent collar. But they have ear tags so we can continue to track them or tell who they are after their collars fall off. So in 2002, the San Jacinto herd in Palm Springs got down to just 4 adult females. So we shifted our augmentation efforts over there from the Rancho Mirage area. And today there are 41 adults, about 80 adult bighorn in that herd. So most of those sheep are released from the ones that we had put into the population, released over there. So it's been a big success story. So there's a number of ways that you can get involved and help. You can help educate others with what you've learned today. I've told you a lot of information, but unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation in our valley, be it about dogs or about the sheep in the golf courses or urban areas. They think that like I said, they think they need it. You can follow any trail closures and restrictions. There aren't very many closures, but restrictions especially for dogs. We have 3 canyons that are closed from 9 months of the year. Carrizo Canyon, Dead Indian Canyon, and Magnesia Canyon, and 2 of those are ecological reserves for cowfish and wildlife, and then one's BLM land, and that's for the 6 months is for lambing season, January through June, and then it's for the hot season, July through September, for the remaining months. And they're important because we've seen the sheep go back there, they're important nursery areas, etc. Don't approach bighorn in the wild. You're more likely to get a better observation if you just kind of sit down and let them be. They'll keep doing what they're doing, or, if you just don't try to approach them. So you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We post updates on there, pictures, what's going on with them. You can become a member. So we're privately funded. We don't get any state or federal funding. So it's all tax deductible. And one of the perks that you can get is come on our member-only bighorn hikes. So during the season, we have a small group that will take out in the field and look for sheep on one of our local trails. And we had 100% success this past season. And so we usually do see sheep when we go out. And it's a nice way to meet other people that are also interested in the sheep. And we have different events, like we just had our spring fling fundraiser a couple evenings ago at Stone Eagle Golf Club, so you could get involved in some of those events. You can log your sheep sightings on iNaturalist. So if you do hike and see the unmarked sheep, by you guys seeing those sheep and telling us about the sightings, then we can help keep track of the sheep. And sometimes you provide very important information, like if you've seen lambs somewhere or just a marked sheep. We had a person report or send a picture of a ewe that just has an ear tag. She had lost her collar, and it was a GPS collar scheduled to fall off. Well, they saw her, and one of our board members sent me along their sighting, and I said, oh my gosh, we haven't seen her since our waterhole count last July. It was fantastic. It was very helpful. We know she's alive still. Luckily, they got a rump shot, so I could see she had an udder enlargement where she was pregnant, and so I was like, oh, she should be having a lamb. So all these things we can tell, and she still looked healthy. So we can tell a lot from pictures. And so if you tell us where they are and such, we just ask that you don't advertise lambs. Like if you want to post on social media and stuff too, that's great, but try not to advertise where you're seeing lambs, because we have a tendency to want to go, everybody wants to go and see that, and it's really stressful. You know, too many people running out to see lambs at the same time is not good for them. But anyway, so iNaturalist, if you can do it on your phone, just remember to, if you do it on your phone in the field, you need to do it, you know, there. If you do it on your phone at home, it's going to map your sheep at your home. So it maps them. I see some of these observations like, yeah, that can't be right. So well, let's hope that's not right. But anyway, so something to consider if you see sheep and want to help. That's a big help. So we also have a resale store at the Antique Galleries of Palm Springs. Our board president and his wife own that gallery, and they've given us this cabinet here. So if you have some small collectibles that maybe have some value or such, we'd love to have them and sell them. You get a tax write-off for the donation, and then we get the proceeds from the sale of those items. So that's another way to help. And you can adopt a bighorn. So it's a unique gift idea. If for the person who has everything, so you can get them an adoption. You get it's $150 for a ram or a ewe, or $100 for a lamb, and you get a certificate. You get a picture of your adopted animal and a fact sheet. You don't get the actual animal. Everybody's like, when can I come see my animal? It's like, it's not that kind of an adoption. So, anyways, so that helps too, and that's totally tax deductible. But you can find out more on our website, bighorninstitute.org, and see if there's a way you want to get involved. Then I have this video just kind of showing some of their general behaviors. This is a lamb going up to her dam. Just kind of seeing them in motion. See, they eat choya. Really good. And they get nutritional value from this, because I've seen sheep eating choya when they had some green up right next to them. I'm like, go to the green. See how good those lambs are getting around? And this is a little one. They'll stay close to mom, really tight to her when they're really little. And they have to, for their survival. See, that was a horn display. Did you see that? Kind of tilted his head. Sorry, there's apparently a lot of wind in there. Another horn display. Oh, this guy. This was summertime. I get really mad at them in summer when they won't just stop chasing. Like, everybody needs a break. We're all hot. And then they'll come in to drink. They might drink for a couple minutes, because this might be the only time of day they come in. They'll usually come in once a day. And then there's usually a lookout. There's a yearling ram right behind them. You just came out of view there a little bit. Now he's in the back. He was watching behind. Here's a low stretch. And he's coming up to her to get her to urinate. Oh, she does it. And then he'll do a lip curl, and he'll assess if she's an estrus ready to be bred or not. But we cut. This is G-rated. That's a big hit. Did it have volume? Can you back that up just a second? Thank you. So this is them making a beeline to water in the summertime. And sometimes when they decide to go, they just go. This is a really big group, actually. Ewes and lambs. All right. So I want to thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but you probably know everything now, so. Okay. Yes?
How many sheep in the La Quinta herd?
I'm sorry, I didn't say that. About 150 in the La Quinta. Yeah, that was the last estimate from the December 2022 survey. The Cal Fish and Wildlife is going to do another range-wide survey this fall, so we'll get another estimate. Yes?
When they were coming down to the park before the fence, most we counted was 43.
But that's not the whole herd. They go all the way to Deep Canyon along Highway 74, all the way down to Martinez Canyon, which is quite a ways south of there. But yes, there's an abnormally large number of sheep on the golf course. That's a problem. And Lake Wea, yes?
Yeah, so we see that, of course, the fences, Lake Wea is now fenced off, but now they're all in PGA West.
No, they are fenced off as well.
I see on next door pictures of them all the time.
That was before, this just happened the end of March, that they just closed the gates. And we were trying to get it closed before all the ewes brought their lambs down for this season, because we lose most of the lambs each year at PGA West from disease or Lake Wea. So that was the goal, yeah.
One other question, sorry. Is there any recovery happening with the Living Desert herd? Or what do they belong to? Is there anything happening?
Well, they don't deal with the wild sheep, and they don't release into the wild. Zoo facilities don't do that, but the Living Desert is actually an excellent educational facilities and a place, if you don't hike, if you haven't seen sheep, go to the Living Desert. It's the best place to see sheep from that regard. Yeah. Yes.
Where are the other populations outside of the Coachella Valley?
All the way down to the Mexican border. So they're in the back country below, like Martinez Canyon, if you're looking at a map, and then Anza-Borrego Park has the bulk of the sheep. But we're hoping that stays that way with this domestic sheep that has now been found in that area. So.
Any other part of the country?
Oh, there's bighorn sheep elsewhere. But these peninsular sheep are only found from the Palm Springs to the Mexican border. If you look at a map, the peninsular ranges, it goes all the way into Baja, Mexico as well. But there's bighorn sheep in 10 western states. Yes? Oh, yeah, that's theirs. If you've given them a chance to move, that group, unfortunately, goes down to Bighorn Golf Club, so they become very habituated. So there's a fence in the talks for that area, an O'Donnell Golf Course in Palm Springs, because those sheep are also, they're getting habituated to people by coming down. Like one of the big problems at PGA West is people were illegally feeding them. They forget this is an endangered species because they're everywhere down there. They're in your backyard and everything. And so they don't respect them as such. And so people were feeding them all the time down there. We have one of the ewes will literally come up to your golf cart and stuff like that. That is exactly the opposite of all wild sheep behavior. So the ones on the Art Smith, yeah, but give them some time to, and just kind of slowly move toward them if you've given them some time to move off, but then just, go on your way. And if there's a way to kind of go around them, do so. You want to go on the lower side of them versus going above them because they feel safer being above. Yeah, you'll get a strong reaction if you try to go above them. Yeah, they will run, freak out. And if you see a ewe and a lamb, do your best not to separate them. Like, don't try to go between them. Try to, definitely give them a wide berth. Yes?
Thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Saving our precious animals. But you had mentioned pneumonia. How do the little ones contract it? Do you know?
Well, there's a number of different viruses that play a role. And like right now, we've got the gnats, the Cuticulates gnats. They spread like blue tongue. That's one of the viruses that can predispose them to bacterial pneumonia. We also have contagious eczema. That we've had a number of lambs that have that, which are sore. It's sore mouth, and they get these terrible sores on their muzzle and then and on the ewe's udder, and they don't want to nurse, and it ends up like going into a bacterial pneumonia eventually, and if they don't overcome it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They can technically give birth at 1, but they usually give birth at 2. We have documented a couple yearlings giving birth at 1 year old, but typically the ewes are bred at 1 year old and give birth at 2. So yeah. Yes? They eat everything. We have people call us, what can I plant that they won't eat? It's like nothing, just plant dirt, you know. So they eat everything. So, I mean, we would really like to see less oleander in the valley, to be honest. Rancho Mirage had disallowed it, I guess is the word, you know, for a while the sheep, before the fence was up and such. I don't know what the criteria is now, but they realized how, you know, it's poisonous to us as well. And actually, I was in Thunderbird Cove one day going after the sheep. I was driving through, and this lady was walking her child in a stroller, and she picked an oleander flower and gave it to the kid. And I... Yeah, I don't know if they wouldn't eat that. Yeah. I can't say for sure that they would stay away from lantana. So I can't recommend you all go plant lantana to keep the sheep off. Yes? iNaturalist.org, yeah. It has an app, and you can also do it on the website, and it's all free. Yeah. Yes? You.
Is climate change affecting our habitat at all? I mean, they can eat anything and they can withstand, you know.
Yes, certainly we're having water sources dry up. Yes. So the reason there's 8 man-made water sources in the ranch, we're certainly seeing some things. Yes. Yeah.
So it sounds like Rancho Mirage, the negotiations were successful with the city. So what about La Quinta and the other desert cities? Are they not willing to jump on board?
No. Rancho Mirage is an exception. They have an incredible, you know, they take their logo as a sheep very seriously, and they care very much about the sheep. They did not have to be strong-armed to put up a fence. They wanted it. They knew it was the right thing to do. And frankly, it was a danger to people having all the auto collisions on Highway 111. But they just did the right thing. They actually did a habitat assessment to all the homeowners in the Thunderbird Estates, if you had any land there along the fence line. And we helped with that by taking the money in so that they could have a tax write-off, and then we turned it back over to the city. Been built before the sheep were listed as endangered. They would have to put up a barrier, a fence, if it was deemed to where it was an artificial food and water source for the sheep. So it's the CVCC, the Coachella Valley Conservation Commission. They implement the multi-species plan, so they paid for the fence along PGA West and Lake Cahuilla. And PGA West was told all along, you do not have to pay for this fence. They would not allow it to go. They had to provide a pristine clean or anything, but we do check them. We make sure they're mostly functioning. Like the Rancho Mirage has a water source. They have a sheep preserve water source, and they actually had a break in their water line, and they were up fixing that just this past month. And I checked on a couple guzzlers behind the Murata. They provide water sources. That was part of the mitigation. So we just checked those this week as well. But definitely when it's hot, in the hot season, we're checking those at least every month, making sure that they're all functional. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you, when you fenced around Lake Cahuilla and the PGA West, is there a water source for them? Because I was just at Lake Cahuilla when it was almost 100, and I saw them running the fence line back and forth.
They're adapting. So it took the sheep in Rancho Mirage 3 weeks, about 3 weeks, when they were just walking the fence line trying to figure out, because they had always lived here. It was not a decade issue. It had been since the 50s. So they had never known anything but the urban area. And they'll adapt, they'll figure it out, and plus they still have access to the tradition in the quarry, so it's going to be kind of a weaning off process. But yes, a guzzler will be installed. Cal Fish and Wildlife is working on that. They're waiting on the permit from the water district to put it in. And it's just going to be on the other side of the fence, not too far in.
What are they doing in the meantime?
Going to tradition in the quarry and eating. They don't need water right now yet. There's still enough vegetation that, you know, they can get the electrolytes and moisture they need. But there's a bunch of them at both places right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
We were at the Living Desert a few years ago at the Bighorn Sheep exhibit, and there was a volunteer there, and she was explaining that the reason the dogs aren't allowed on the trails is because the dogs carry a virus.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation about dogs and the sheep in general. So we've heard because they smell, you know, they can smell them, they can whatever. There isn't the right information out there. because it can be very confusing. Because that was why a fence is required now, is because we tried all the other deterrents. Way back in Rancho Mirage, we tried, like, I think, was it tiger urine? I mean, big cat urine, you know, different kinds. Statues of coyotes, which they just, like, look at and walk by, like, what's up? You know, so these things don't work. So there were alternatives that were tried before a fence. It's not like everybody just jumped into, oh, put up a fence, because it's expensive and, you know, it's not ideal, but it works. And it's safe for them. Yes? They came from the Asiatic, what was it, Jim? The land bridge, yeah, the Asiatic, you know, before in the ice ages when we were all connected and all of that. So, yeah. Yes? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, so they are becoming very habituated to the hikers on the lichen trail. And I know it's lichen, but I like lichen too. And yes, they're coming down on, I call it Bilardo, but I really like the way you say it, however you said it. And we've talked to the wildlife agencies. So there's a corner of the road there where they're coming down, and it's behind one of the hotels there. And we're starting to talk, you know, they're going to start talking to Palm Springs and other land owners and partners over there, and to see where some fences might be needed. Like I mentioned, O'Donnell Golf Course, that's pretty much a given. They're down there every day. And they were down in the winter when it was cool. It was, you know, green everywhere, and they come down because it's just a habit. No, people do not give the sheep diseases, but yes, they're habituating, and so that is a concern. And I think that was all your questions? Yeah. Okay, yes. You're right. Exactly. So we don't even understand all of the negative implications that the chemicals that they put down on the golf courses have on the sheep. We know that the fertilizers, I think it was the fertilizers, can make them more susceptible to disease. But they're drinking the water, they drink it out of the gutters, they, you know, eating all these things. So, and they tell the people, like in PJ West, we're going to spray. Don't go on the golf course for like a week or whatever. You don't want to bring that in your house. Well, the sheep are down there and they're eating it. So it's not good. Nothing is good about the sheep coming in the urban areas, period. Yes?
How are their mouths structured that they can eat that thorny choice?
I know, they love, most of what they eat has stickers or thorns. So they don't have upper incisors, and they just have like, their roof of their mouth is smooth, it's really rough, and they don't have a lot of nerve endings in there. So yeah, they're pretty neat. Yeah, I mean, I get one sticker, and I'm like, oh, I can't walk. So, okay, yeah. Oh. Yeah. Not always. And it's not necessarily lambs. Yeah, they sometimes fall. I mean, they're incredibly agile on the mountains, but not infallible. Yes?
So, because the males mate with just about everybody,
Yes.
they father a lot of lambs. When they're in their herds, which mothers are they, you know, which mothers of their children are they hanging out with?
Well, that's a good question. So they're very tight to their own mothers when they're young, and then they're weaned by 6 months of age. After that, they just stay with the ewe groups.
I'm talking about the ram and the ewe, because the rams are mating with everybody. So,
Mm-hmm.
and since they have kids little
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, when they're in the herds, the rams and the ewes are
For who the rams, I'm not following what you're asking about the rams with their offspring.
When they're in their herds,
Right.
So they could be the fathers of those children of the rams.
Right.
So that they could also be fathers of lambs, but
Elsewhere.
elsewhere.
Correct.
I was just wondering how that works out.
Are you worrying about inbreeding or something?
No, it's just how it's decided among them if they do, which mothers of their babies are there hanging out with.
I have no idea. They don't, yeah. I mean, they hang out with who's in estrus. That's who they want to hang out with. So they're going to all the ewes, and whoever is receptive to being bred, that's who they're going to follow around the most. No, they have no affinity for, yeah. And everybody, we like it when it's like, oh, here's a whole family, and the dad's leading them. Those rams don't lead anybody. It's the ewes. The ewes lead the groups. The rams follow. Occasionally, you might see a ram, reacting to something, then they all follow him. It looks like that, but he's not this father that he leads around. Yeah. Yes, there are mountain lions. That's their main predator. But don't worry, I've done this for 23 years. I've only seen one mountain lion. I've been on a lot of really, really fresh sheep kills from mountain lions. Never saw the cat. I have been watched by mountain lions many times, I can tell you. You can feel it. But I've never seen them. I mean, seeing fresh tracks and scat and so forth, but I've only actually seen one in the wild. Now, Jim has seen, 6 or something? But he's been here 40 years, so, give me another few years and I'm sure I'll see some more. But I saw them I saw my lion when I was watching sheep. It's back in Dead Indian Canyon. Last year, there was 2 ewes, 2 lambs, and they were all eating, and then all of a sudden they clustered up, and they were staring at the canyon bottom. I was like, there must be a person down here, something. So I'm looking, trying to find it, and I was like, wow, they really are reacting. I really want to figure this out. And then I see this cat going up the hill, and they were just focused in its tight group, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I finally see a cat. It's like, don't eat my sheep. And so it was only a couple minutes that I got to see it. It went up and out of view, and it must have gone way out of view because finally, after about 10 minutes, they relaxed and started eating again and bedding down. But it was the neatest thing to see, and I was so happy. And then I went back the next day to make sure the sheep were still alive, that it left. So, because that's an area we've known there's been mountain lion kills in there. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that your GPS collars fall off. How much time do you get on those things?
Well, they used to be programmed to fall off, but now they have solar batteries, so they're made to last a lot longer. These were 2 and 3 years, depending on how many locations you program them to get. So that's what they used to last, 2 to 3 years, depending if you stretched out their locations or had a lot. Yes, ma'am.
You said that they are virtually eating everything. Does that mean they're not strictly herbivores?
No, they're herbivores.
Would they eat, chuck wall?
No, they only eat everything, meaning plants. All native vegetation is what I said, yeah, just plants. But people try to feed them marshmallows and other things at PJ West. I was like, no one should eat those. So, least of all sheep. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.